No one took the crying bride at the station until a rancher's son pointed, "That's my mama." Wyoming Territory, 1891. A small, wind-worn train station sat on the edge of the prairie like a forgotten bone. The paint was peeling from its wooden planks, and the lone station master leaned lazily on a post, watching dust swirl in slow, tired circles. The midday train hissed to a halt with a screech of steel. Passengers disembarked quickly, ranchers, widows, men in wrinkled suits. But one figure remained in the doorway of the last car, unmoving. She stepped down, a woman in a silver-gray wedding dress, faded and travel-worn. The hem was stained with soot, the bodice crumpled like it had been slept in. Her veil hung limp, clinging to her cheek in the dry heat. In her trembling hands she held a creased letter sealed in red wax. Her eyes were hollow, her lips pale. She looked neither excited nor nervous, just gone. Annalisa moved like a ghost and sat on the weathered bench just outside the station doors. For a moment she stared at the horizon, then lowered her head into her hands. No one approached her, no carriage waited, no flowers, no smile, no man. Two older townsfolk walked past, whispering. "Another mail-order bride," the woman said with a click of her tongue. "Poor thing. Better man got cold feet," the man muttered. Annalise did not react. She simply clutched the letter tighter, knuckles white. Her mind drifted backward. Her father's study, dimly lit, all dark wood and pipe smoke, his voice as cold as the silver pen he forced into her hand. "You will write the letter. You will marry the man. There will be no more shame on this family's name. You want your child to live in a gutter?" He had slammed a folder onto the desk, her son's forged death certificate. The memory made her breath catch. "Now, at the train station," she whispered under her breath, voice like a prayer choked with dust. "If you are alive, my love, my baby, please find me." A sharp laugh nearby drew her back. Children were chasing each other near the platform. Their laughter was the only sound with life in it. One little boy, maybe 4 years old, had a face like sun-warmed bread and eyes the color of riverstone. He stopped mid-run, staring at her. Really staring. He pointed a tiny finger toward her, turning to his friends. "That's my mama," he said, voice clear and proud. The others laughed. One boy shoved him. "You dope. That's just a lady in a dress." "No," the boy insisted. "I saw her. She's in the picture. The one on Daddy's shelf. He drew her. That's her." A few adults nearby chuckled. "Hush now, Tommy. Don't make up stories." But Annalisa's breath hitched. The name rang like a church bell in her ears. She slowly lifted her gaze to meet the boy's. "Tommy?" she asked, her voice barely audible. The boy's smile faded into cautious curiosity. "Yeah? Between New York and Elwood. What is your father's name?" "Wyatt Callahan," the boy said plainly, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Her world tilted. The letter slipped from her hand, fluttering to the dirt like a discarded vow. Her eyes brimmed with tears. Her lips trembled. "Please," she whispered, "take me to your home." The Callahan Ranch stood alone at the edge of the hills, its fences gray and warped from seasons of wind. Horses grazed lazily near the barn. The sky was bruised with storm clouds, the air thick with coming rain. Annalise stood at the gate, her dress still damp from the train ride, her shoes caked in dry mud. Her heart pounded so loudly she swore the cattle could hear it. Across the yard, a man split firewood with sharp, angry strokes. His sleeves were rolled, forearms taut, jaw clenched. He worked like he wanted the wood to bleed. He looked up. The Thayer eyes met. Wyatt froze, axe midair. His body went still. The wind itself seemed to pause. The world narrowed to one heartbeat. 2, 3. Annalise opened her mouth, but no words came. Wyatt dropped the axe. It thudded into the earth. He stepped back, just one step, but it was a step of disbelief, of recoil. His chest rose like he had been punched without warning. The color drained from his sun-browned face. "Tommy!" he shouted, voice sharp and cutting. The boy peeked out from behind a fence post, clutching the hem of his shirt. "Inside. Now. Close the gate behind you." Tommy hesitated, glancing at the woman in the torn wedding dress. "I said now." Tommy obeyed, slowly retreating. The gate creaked shut between mother and son. Annalise's legs buckled. She collapsed to her knees in front of the gate, clutching the iron bars like they were the last thing tethering her to this world. Her body shook with sobs, and rain began to fall, first in light sprinkles, then heavier, until it soaked her hair to her skin. "I looked for you," she cried softly. "I looked for both of you." Wyatt stood still, like a statue in the storm. His hands clenched into fists, his lips pressed tight. He turned his back on her and walked toward the house, boots sinking slightly in the softening ground. He made it to the porch before stopping. His shoulders rose and fell with uneven breaths. Inside, Tommy's small face appeared in the window. The boy pressed his palms to the glass, watching his mother crumpled outside the gate like a discarded doll. Wyatt stepped into the house. The door closed behind him with a dull thud, but he did not go far. From inside the room, he stood on the steps leading up to the gallery, and in an instant, watching the action from the shadows. Outside, the rain came harder. Thunder rolled over the hills. A flash of lightning lit up the yard like midday. For an instant, Wyatt could see her clearly, knees bent, arms wrapped around herself, hair clinging to her cheeks. Then came the thunderclap. Annalise flinched violently and let out a cry. She hunched over, pressing her hands to her ears, lips moving in silent terror. Wyatt's hand went to the door. He gripped the knob, ready to pull it open and run to her, but he stopped. His breath caught in his throat. His eyes stung. The storm outside roared, but a louder storm spun inside his chest. He stepped back, letting go of the door. Annalisa remained on the ground, shivering in her dress, alone. Wyatt turned and leaned against the wall, head tilted back, eyes closed. His mind spiraled. 4 years. 4 God-forsaken years. I didn't think anything. She never wrote, never came back. And now she shows up like a ghost, saying she looked for me? Why now? He could not stop the memory. It came like a flood. Her eyes that night, when she disappeared. Her father's carriage waiting, her promise that she would return soon. "I will come back for you, for our son." She never did. He had buried that night deep beneath bitterness. But now, seeing her again, sopping wet and shaking in the dirt, it unraveled him. He opened his eyes and looked again through the window. She had not moved. And for the first time in 4 years, the question clawed through his rage and sat cold in his throat. "Why did you leave us?" He whispered it aloud, but only the storm heard. Annalise stirred. The scent of something warm tickled her senses, a faint aroma of oats, milk, and cinnamon. She blinked slowly, her lashes heavy with dried tears. A rough wool blanket rested over her shoulders, the edges frayed, but tucked in with care. She was lying in a small room, familiar. The wooden beams overhead, the chipped window pane, the scarred dresser in the corner with a crack down the middle. Her breath caught. She knew this room. Years ago, she had folded baby clothes here, watched Wyatt sleep in the old rocking chair with Tommy in his arms. Now it smelled of dust and silence. Beside the bed sat a bowl of porridge, still steaming slightly. A spoon rested beside it, clean. Her fingers reached for it slowly, trembling. She had not tasted kindness in years. "Wyatt," she whispered, barely a breath. The name fell from her lips like a secret broken loose. Suddenly, the air shifted. Flashback, 4 years ago. The room was dark. Her arms were tied behind her. Her cheek burned from where a hand had struck her. Footsteps paced outside the door. The metallic scent of blood and the stifling heat of confinement pressed down on her like a coffin. She had tried to escape, twice. The second time, they locked her in without water for 2 days. You will marry who we choose, her father had spat through the bars, or you'll never see daylight again. The memory slammed shut. Present, the door creaked open. Wyatt entered, his face hard as carved oak. He carried a damp cloth in one hand and a bottle in the other. He did not look at her as he walked to the table and began cleaning up a broken glass. "You should eat," he said. His voice was flat, controlled, but his eyes betrayed something deeper. Anger, yes, but also ache. She opened her mouth. "Why did you—" "I only brought you in," he interrupted, "because I do not want you dying in front of my son." His words hit like a slap. She flinched. He finally looked at her. For a second the shield slipped. "You left," he said low. "You left him, you left me, without a damn word." She tried to sit up, her body weak. "I did not choose to leave." "Spare me," he snapped, turning his back. "You made your choice. Whatever your reasons were, you stayed gone." Annalise's lips quivered. "Do you think I wanted this? Do you think I walked away from you because I stopped loving you?" He picked up something from the dresser and turned. In his hands was a small scarf, faded blue, edges ragged, the same one Tommy used to wear when he was barely a year old. "He sleeps with this," Wyatt said, his voice roughening. "Still, every night. Calls it his dream blanket." She gasped. Wyatt stepped forward, holding the scarf like it was a relic from a past he had tried and failed to bury. "You know how many times he's asked me why he doesn't have a mother like other kids?" he said. "What was I supposed to say? That she loved us but not enough to come back?" Annalise clutched the blanket to her chest, eyes full of anguish. She wanted to scream the truth, that she had returned once before, to find their home burned out and abandoned, that the neighbors told her Wyatt and Tommy were dead, that she had wandered half-mad for months, trying to believe it was a lie. But the words would not come. Not yet. Instead, she bowed her head and whispered, "I am sorry." One tear fell, then another. Wyatt looked at her for a long moment. Then, without a word, he turned and left the room. The door closed behind him. The morning after the storm broke with a hush. The air was crisp, the ground still damp from the night's downpour. Sunlight crept across the porch floorboards like hesitant fingers, and a low breeze rustled the brittle leaves of the cottonwood trees. Wyatt stood by the screen door, arms crossed, his hat shadowing his face. Annalise followed him quietly, her bare feet soft against the wood. He had not said a word to her since leaving the room, but now he gestured silently to the porch bench, out of sight from the road, away from the eyes and whispers of the town. She said, "Tommy," peeked from behind the kitchen curtain, face half covered by the faded scarf she remembered. He grinned shyly, then ducked out of sight. Annalise lifted her hand and waved at him, timid but real. Her fingers trembled. Wyatt leaned against a post, arms still crossed. His voice, when it came, was low and without emotion. "What do you want, Annalise?" She flinched at the flat use of her name. No softness, no echo of what it once had meant in his mouth. She looked down at her hands. "I did not choose to leave." He did not respond. She gathered herself. "I was taken. He cut her off, voice sharp as broken glass. "Let me guess. Your father, threats, a locked door, the usual tale." She looked up, eyes shining. "It is not a tale. It happened." Wyatt laughed bitterly. The sound was dry and hollow. "Do you know what I got in the mail? A wedding announcement. Your name, his name. Sent to me like some twisted joke. No letter, no explanation, just, 'We cordially invite you—'" He stopped, jaw clenching. "I thought it was your way of ending it." Annalise's face crumpled. Her shoulders shook. "I was forced to write it," she whispered. "They made me sign it. I did not want to. Wyatt, You think that makes it better?" he snapped. "You still vanished. You still stayed gone." "I tried to find you," she cried. "You tried once," he said coldly. "Then what? Gave up? Started a new life?" She looked away, silent. Suddenly, The door creaked open. Tommy stepped outside, holding a folded piece of paper with both hands. "I made something," he said softly. Wyatt turned. "Go back inside." "But—" "I said go." Tommy's lip trembled. He looked at Annalise, then walked over to her, hand outstretched. "I drew this yesterday. It's you," he said. Annalise took the paper gently. It was a child's drawing, simple and colorful, her face beside his and Wyatt's, holding hands. Above them, in shaky letters, "My family." Her fingers covered her mouth. Wyatt stormed over and snatched the paper away. "Inside," he growled. Tommy hesitated, then obeyed. The door slammed shut. Annalise sat frozen, the echo of the slam hanging in the silence. "I do not expect you to forgive me," she said finally, "but I never stopped loving you. Or him." Wyatt stared at the closed door for a long moment. He said nothing. He did not look back as he walked inside. But this time he did not slam the door. And this time, as she stood up to leave, he watched her from the window, long after she was gone from sight. The afternoon sun was dipping low when the knock came at the door. Wyatt opened it with the weariness of a man who had already lived through a storm too big for words. On the porch stood an old man with bent shoulders and a worn satchel slung across his chest. His beard was grizzled, his eyes rimmed with guilt. "Wyatt Callahan?" he asked. Wyatt nodded. "Who's asking?" The old man removed his hat and clutched it tightly. "My name's Samuel Layton. I used to work the postal line out of Cheyenne. Retired now, for good reason." Wyatt narrowed his eyes. "You want something?" Samuel didn't answer right away. He reached into his satchel and pulled out a thick envelope, yellowed, stained, edges curled like old leaves. Dried blood marked the bottom corner, dark brown now with age. Wyatt stared at it. "What is that?" Samuel held it out with trembling hands. "It was supposed to be delivered to you, 4 years ago, from her." Wyatt hesitated, then took it slowly, like it might burn him. He broke the brittle seal and unfolded the letter. "Wyatt, they are forcing me to marry a man I have never met. I am not free. I am not safe. Our son, please tell him, I never wanted to leave. I tried to escape, and they beat me for it. They locked me away. If you get this, come for me. I will keep fighting, but I do not know how long I can hold on. I love you. I love our son. Forgive me. Annalise." Wyatt's hand trembled. The paper fell from his fingers like a feather, but it hit the ground like thunder. He gripped the porch railing, shoulders tight, chest heaving. I was paid to keep it," Samuel said quietly. "Your father-in-law said you were a bad match and that she needed to marry better. I told myself it was not my place, but it was. God help me, it was." Wyatt did not speak. His mouth opened, but no sound came. His eyes locked on the letter like it had come from the grave. "I had it hidden in my barn, behind a crate," the man continued, eyes wet. "Last night, I couldn't sleep. I saw her in town, standing in the rain like a ghost. That's when I knew. I had to make it right." Wyatt lowered himself to the porch steps, the letter clutched in his fist now. He stared at nothing. For the first time in years, a tear slipped down his cheek, carving a clean line through the dust. "She fought," he murmured. "Dear God, she fought." Samuel placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "You still have time, son. Most men don't get that." Wyatt didn't answer, but the tightness in his chest began to crack, and for the first time, something inside him, something frozen, started to thaw. The rain returned with a vengeance that night, heavier than the storm before. Lightning cracked across the black sky like the world itself was breaking. Inside the house, the fire had burned low, casting soft flickers on the wooden walls. Wyatt sat at the kitchen table, elbows on the wood, head in his hands. The opened letter from Annalise lay beside him, now smoothed and dry, but heavy as stone. A soft cry broke the silence. Then another, sharper, panicked. Wyatt stood in an instant. Tommy's voice trembled from the bedroom. He rushed inside and found the boy twisted in his sheets, soaked with sweat, cheeks flushed crimson. "Tommy?" he whispered, placing a palm on the boy's forehead. Burning too hot, his heart dropped. Wyatt grabbed a cloth and dampened it, pressing it to Tommy's head, but the boy moaned louder, his body shivering beneath the heat. "Annalise!" Wyatt called instinctively, then stopped himself. She was not here anymore. But she was close, somewhere in the barn or the empty shack out back where he had seen a lamp flicker earlier. He hesitated just a moment, and that was all the time it took for the front door to burst open. Rain and wind swept in with the figure of a woman, Annalise. She was barefoot, soaked to the bone, hair plastered to her cheeks. Her eyes locked on Wyatt's for half a heartbeat, but then she rushed past him and into the room where her son lay. "Oh, God," she gasped, falling to her knees beside the bed. "Tommy!" She touched his cheeks, kissed his forehead, whispered something only a mother would say. Wyatt stood in the doorway, motionless. "I will carry him," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "What?" "To the parson's house," she answered. "Reverend Collins has medicine, a fire. I will not lose him." She scooped the boy into her arms, struggling beneath his weight. Her knees buckled slightly, but she tightened her grip and rose. Wyatt moved instinctively. "Give him to me," he said, stepping forward. I said no," she snapped, tears streaming down her face. "I left once. I failed him once. I will not fail him again." The room fell silent. Outside, thunder roared. And then, without a word, Wyatt removed his coat and stepped behind her. He draped it over her shoulders. Annalise flinched, but did not move. Then, gently, he reached out, not to take Tommy from her arms, but to lift both of them together. He cradled the boy with one arm and wrapped the other around Annalise's back. They stepped into the storm. Wind lashed at them, but Wyatt shielded them with his body. Together they trudged through the mud path toward the parson's house. No words, no explanations, only movement, only breath, only urgency. Lightning flashed, casting their shadows long and tangled across the wet earth. By the time they reached the Reverend's porch, both were shivering, soaked, and exhausted. Reverend Collins ushered them in without question. He saw the boy's face and rushed to boil water, gather tinctures, stoke the fire. Wyatt placed Tommy gently on the couch, and Annalise knelt beside him, clutching his hand. Wyatt stood behind her. He looked down, at her soaked shoulders, at the scarf Tommy still clung to, even in fevered sleep. His hand trembled at his side, and something broke inside him, not with a crash, but like a dam that had been eroded slowly, until at last it surrendered. "I cannot lose them again," he thought. "I will not survive it." His hand found her shoulder. She turned to look up at him. No words, just her eyes, and his. And all the silence that had poisoned the space between them slowly began to dissolve in that moment of quiet, shared breath. Thunder rumbled again, but in Wyatt's heart the storm was starting to pass. The days that followed were quiet, almost too quiet. Annalise moved into the Callahan ranch, not into Wyatt's room, not yet. But the home began to breathe again. She planted rows of carrots and herbs beside the porch. Tommy chased chickens barefoot through the yard, giggling in ways Wyatt had never heard before. Some mornings, Wyatt would glance out the window and catch Annalise brushing the boy's hair with soft fingers, whispering to him. She never raised her voice, never looked away when he asked hard questions. She just loved him. And Wyatt, for all his guarded silences, found himself softening again. He would walk up behind her while she was cutting vegetables and brush her arm. At night, they sat on the porch steps and watched the stars in wordless understanding. Still, they had not spoken the words. One evening, as they sat down to dinner, just the three of them, around a table that once felt so empty, Tommy piped up between spoonfuls of stew. "When are you two going to get married?" Annalise choked softly on her drink. Wyatt raised an eyebrow. Tommy leaned forward, elbows on the table. In the books at school, when a mama and papa love each other, they get married in a big wedding. I want that. I want to tell people I got a family." Wyatt reached across the table and placed a hand gently over Annalise's. "Soon," he said. "Real soon." Her eyes widened slightly, then softened. He meant it. He had been planning to propose during the upcoming harvest festival. The town square would be lit with paper lanterns. Music would echo down the dirt streets. It would be perfect. Or so he thought. The day of the festival arrived, bright and full of promise. Annalise wore a pale yellow dress that fluttered when she walked. Her eyes were alight with something new, something like hope. Wyatt carried a small ring in his pocket. It was not much, a silver band with a blue stone, but it was his mother's, and it had waited long enough. The town bustled with booths, laughter, and fiddlers. Children darted between hay bales. Adults gossiped by pie stands. Annalise was helping Tommy pin a ribbon to the harvest wreath when the sound of hooves interrupted everything. A man rode into the square on a black horse, leather coat flapping behind him, a jagged scar down his cheek like a crack through stone. He dismounted hard. "I am looking for Annalise Whitmore," he shouted. Silence. Annalise froze, eyes wide. The man's voice boomed across the square. "I have come to take back my wife." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Wyatt stepped forward, standing between the stranger and Annalise. "She is not your wife," the man sneered. "She signed the papers. She belongs to me." "Name," Wyatt demanded. "Doyle Crane. You'll remember it well. Her father arranged it. She sent the letter herself." Annalise stepped forward, voice steady but sharp. "I wrote that letter with a broken wrist and a knife at my throat." Doyle reached into his coat and pulled out a folded, weather-worn document. "Her signature, right there. Legal." Wyatt glanced at it, then looked at Annalise. "Did you agree to this?" She didn't blink. "I wrote it because I was beaten and locked in a cellar. I signed it because I thought no one would ever find me. But I was never his wife, not in my heart, not in my soul." Doyle's eyes flashed. "You think you can embarrass me?" he hissed. "You think you can just walk away?" He lunged. Wyatt moved first. The two men collided hard. Doyle threw the first punch, catching Wyatt in the jaw. Blood spilled from the corner of Wyatt's mouth, but he did not fall. He grabbed Doyle by the coat and slammed him into a post. They scuffled fiercely, fists flying, boots scraping against dust and splinters. The townsfolk yelled, tried to pull them apart, but the rage had festered too long. Finally, the Reverend and Samuel Layton, the old postman, stepped between them. "Getting dressed." "That woman was kidnapped," Samuel shouted, holding up the letter. "I saw the truth and I kept it hidden, but not anymore." "She never consented to that marriage," the Reverend added. "You have no claim." Doyle snarled, tried to fight again, but the sheriff arrived, grabbed him by the arm and hauled him away. "You come back to this town, Crane," the sheriff said, "and you will leave in a box." Silence returned. Wyatt turned to Annalise. His lip was bleeding, his knuckles scraped raw, but his eyes were on fire with something holy. He walked to her slowly, pulled the ring from his pocket, and dropped to one knee. "Nothing, no name, no lie, no paper, will ever come between us again," he said hoarsely. "I am not asking out of pity or pride. I am asking because I love you, because we are already a family. Will you be my wife?" Annalise covered her mouth with both hands. Her tears flowed freely. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes. 1,000 times, yes." The sun dipped low across the Wyoming prairie, spilling golden light across the field behind the Callahan Ranch. The tall grasses swayed gently, painted in amber and honey, and wildflowers nodded their heads in the breeze, as if blessing what was about to come. A narrow path had been cleared between the blooms, marked by linen streamers and wooden chairs borrowed from the church. No fancy arches, no grand stage, just nature, reverence, and the sound of hearts beating full and steady. The whole town had gathered. Men with dusty boots, women in homespun shawls, children with faces freshly scrubbed. They stood in quiet anticipation, murmuring softly, waiting for the moment. At the end of the path stood Wyatt Callahan, dressed simply but proud, a light in his eyes that had not been there in years. His bruises from the fight had faded to faint yellow. His hands were clasped nervously in front of him, fingers twitching only once when he saw her. "Annalise,"